Conor McGregor is taking on Max Holloway in a rematch this International Fight Week at 170. Their first fight was at 145. We had this fight confirmed last weekend during the UFC Apex card, and this is an absolutely massive fight because this is Max Holloway's first fight at 170, and this is Conor McGregor's first fight back since his loss to Dustin Poirier via his leg breaking. And I wanted to run through today a couple of the fights that I would like to see for McGregor if he were to knock out Max Holloway in a round or two, because this could be one of Conor McGregor's last fights in his UFC contract, in his UFC career, because he might not want to re-sign with UFC. So this one could be his second to last fight. Whatever the next one is, could be his last. And so I'm making this video thinking of what would be the most interesting, or the ones I would like to see, but are also semi-realistic for Conor McGregor in what could be his last UFC fight, saying that he does beat Max Holloway via a knockout, let's say, just so that he has enough authority to go for bigger shots in these divisions of 155 and 170. So, starting off with an honorable mention, I am putting Islam Makhachev. Now, the reason that this is an honorable mention isn't because I don't want to see this. This is probably the one I would love to see the absolute most. But I am putting it as an honorable mention because I don't think there's any possible world where this happens. I think there's 2 or 3 fights away from this being a possibility if Conor McGregor were to stick around and the UFC try and make that fight. But I don't see Islam versus Conor McGregor happening, because if Conor McGregor knocks out Max Holloway, that's a huge win, but that is a huge win for 155 title fights, not for 170. And Islam has tons of contenders right now that he should probably have to face over McGregor. It would be a hard sell. I could see a 1% chance of them making the fight, but I don't think it gets made. But I would absolutely love to see that just for the storyline of it. So yeah, now getting into the actual top 5 of ones I would like to see the most. Mauricio Rufy. Now, I think this is a very possible fight for a Conor McGregor next fight after beating Max Holloway. And I'm putting this as Rufy is just beaten Michael Chandler on the White House lawn, beats on him, and then calls out McGregor, or calls out for a big fight after. And because he's beating the guy that McGregor should have fought at UFC 303, he is a very interesting matchup for McGregor, because there's those talks of him being the new McGregor with his fighting style, the karate style that he's got, the way he strikes, very similar to McGregor, and it would be very interesting to see that matchup and those two fighting with their different styles. So I think this would be a really interesting clash, and I could see it happening if the UFC, if Rufy gets a stellar knockout over Michael Chandler at the White House. I could see this happening even if McGregor wins or loses. I think this is a potential fight, because I think they would want to build the star power of Rufy even bigger than it is now that he's left the fighting nerds, especially. So yeah, I think this would be an absolutely incredible fight. And it'd be a very interesting stylistic matchup for a Conor McGregor in what would possibly be a last UFC fight, or one of his final UFC fights on his contract. And this would be another fight that I think Rufy would be somebody that would be willing to go up to 170 to get the McGregor fight, especially since he's kind of in a weird spot with some of the division, with how Benoit's beating him, and he's not really at that top of the division, but he's still climbing. I think this would be a really interesting matchup. Then number 4 is another fighting nerd with Carlos Prates. Now, this would be absolute murder from Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates would be able to destroy Conor McGregor. But the reason I'm putting this is because it is at 170, the McGregor-Max Holloway fight, and they had offered the fight to Carlos Prates, and he said, yes, I believe. Which, if he did say yes, and they did actually offer him that fight, we obviously don't know officially, but that's what the rumors were, was that Carlos Prates was offered it, Carlos said yes, or McGregor said yes. McGregor was the one who said yes to Carlos Prates. And I believe Carlos might have also said yes, they just ended up going in a different direction. That would be a huge fight, especially with where Carlos is right now, kind of in a limbo of He deserves the title shot, but Ian Gary deserves it more. They might want to give it to Morales. They might even be thinking of giving it to Usman, or Usman might be moving up. The welterweight division's weird right now. I could see them offering Carlos Prates McGregor to build his name even bigger off of the back of a McGregor, where that would be a crazy striking fight. And we're living in the delusional world where McGregor styles on Holloway completely, knocks him out in the first round or two, looks perfect like prime McGregor. Then this fight would be interesting and it'd be very fun. I'm saying I think Carlos Prates beats McGregor 10 times out of 10 right now, but I think it would be a great way to get Carlos's star power built up even more. And if McGregor pulled off the unbelievable upset of beating Holloway and then beating Prates, you give him a title shot after that at the 170 belt. There's so much potential with it, and it would be a great way to bring eyeballs to Carlos Prates, who is one of the most entertaining and violent fighters we have on the roster and in UFC history. So I think this would be a really entertaining matchup, and the only reason it's really on here is because they had offered the fight to Prates, and it was semi-close to being done. Then we move up to number 3, which is Paddy Pimblett. Now, this is saying that if Paddy beats Benoit Saint-Denis at UFC International Fight Week, UFC 329, the same card as McGregor, Paddy versus McGregor is a crazy big fight. I don't I'm not counting Benoit because I don't think there's as much interest in my mind for a Benoit versus McGregor if Benoit wins. But if Paddy wins and McGregor wins, maybe even if McGregor loses, but if McGregor knocks out Holloway, that gives him legitimate purpose. He is a stepping stone that makes sense for the career of a Paddy Pimblett, especially coming off of the win over Benoit Saint-Denis in this case. Benoit loses, Paddy gets on the mic, calls out the winner of the main event, regardless of who it is, a Holloway or a McGregor. Then McGregor goes out, knocks out Holloway in a round or two, and then this fight gets set up. Now, obviously, there's a lot of dominoes that might not a single one of them might fall in place. Paddy might just get slimed out by Benoit, and then Holloway will probably destroy Conor. But in the world where Paddy beats Benoit Saint-Denis, and then where McGregor slimes out Holloway, this would be one of the biggest fights in UFC history. Paddy Pimblett is a huge star over in Europe, and genuinely getting over into the across the entire world. He is a huge name, a huge star, lots of eyeballs on him versus the biggest star ever. It's always kind of seemed like the plan of the UFC to build Paddy into the next McGregor, and putting them on the same card is a step in that direction. I think them fighting is a huge step, and Paddy could definitely get to 170. It would be an incredibly big fight, an incredibly telling fight for both of the careers of these guys, and it would just be a great opportunity in the top of the lightweight division, which will be probably a little off depending on how the White House main event goes. If Gaethje does somehow beat Ilya, then Paddy's probably not looking for another title shot. And then if Ilya wins, Ilya's probably going to want to move up. So there's a little bit of ironing out down in the lightweight division. I don't think Paddy's in the running for an interim, even if he beats Benoit, or a vacant, even if he beats Benoit. So a McGregor versus Paddy fight, I think, could work, whether McGregor wins or loses. But the world where they've both coming off of a win is an absolute banger. So that's why it's at number 3 on my list. Then we're going to move up to number 2, which is Charles Oliveira for the BMF belt. Now, obviously, Charles winning the BMF belt, it was not the most entertaining fight possible. It was still a fun fight, still a very skillful fight, a complete domination by Charles Oliveira. And if Charles Oliveira would have won that fight in a more striking or a more impressive, not impressive, but finishing fashion, where he goes out and would have submitted Max Holloway, then this would have probably been the fight we had at International Fight Week. It probably would have been Charles Oliveira versus Conor McGregor for the BMF. And I think this is the easiest way for the UFC to get McGregor a third belt. And honestly, if McGregor, let's say he beats Max Holloway, he's knocked out Max Holloway, just beat the guy that Charles took 5 rounds for. You could build it up as McGregor knocked out the guy that Charles took the entire distance. Let's see who really wins for the BMF belt. And if McGregor did somehow beat Charles Oliveira, then you could have McGregor leave the UFC with the BMF belt. And yeah, then you get rid of the belt and it's gone. Or you have Charles Oliveira beat Conor McGregor and most likely submit him. Then you get Charles Oliveira with more hype going into his next matchup off of one of the biggest names in sports history. It's an absolutely massive fight no matter what. This fight was one that Conor did want, as a reminder. This is one he wanted back before he broke his leg. He went out with a Brazilian mouthguard in with the intent of calling out Charles Oliveira on the mic afterwards. After the Dustin Poirier fight, if he had won it, he would have most likely called out for Charles Oliveira, which would have been an absolutely massive fight back then. Now, still huge. And in a lightweight division with Charles, Arman, Ilya, Gaethje, Arman will probably be for the next title. If Ilya decides to move up, then yeah, Charles might end up fighting for the vacant lightweight title against Arman. But in a world where Charles could defend the BMF against Conor McGregor, that would be insanely massive for Charles Oliveira, and it would be a very fun fight too. Because yes, Charles's last fight was not the most entertaining, but Charles is still the most. I would put it in my mind as the most entertaining fighter in the world. Either him or Carlos Prates, Max Holloway. Those few are the most entertaining fighters in the world, and I think Charles Oliveira would go out there a lot more aggressive than he did against Max, with willingness to strike and willingness to go hunt for the submission a lot more. Knowing the cardio problems McGregor's had in the past, Charles would not be worried about going for it and trying to gas out McGregor so that he could get the submission. I could see Charles finishing Conor McGregor, and it's just an absolutely massive fight. Gives you the chance to put McGregor for a belt. I don't think it's something the UFC would pass up if they had to. And yeah, this would be a huge, huge, huge mega fight for the UFC and for both of these guys' careers. I mean, these are some of the most popular fighters in UFC history, fighting for one of the fan favorites belt is what it pretty much is. The baddest mother belt is the fan favorite belt, and Charles Oliveira, Max Holloway Charles Oliveira, Conor McGregor. I keep thinking of Max Holloway because of the fact that they already fought. Charles Oliveira versus Conor McGregor is one of the biggest fights you can possibly make in the sport today. And then we move up to number one, which is the only thing bigger, I think, than him fighting for the BMF belt. It would be against Ilia Topuria for the lightweight belt, or against Ilia Topuria, period. This would be a huge fight. There are so many similarities between Conor McGregor and Ilia Topuria that it is kind of crazy. They both have the similar back tattoo. They both beat the featherweight GOAT to get their title, then immediately moved up. Well, not in Ilia's case. He defended it once, but they moved up very quickly and fought for the second division, beat the title holder there beat somebody there, got their second belt. They're from a different country that doesn't have too many big stars. They're both power hitters from 145. They both kind of speak into existence what they were going to do, with Mystic Mac and Ilya always just so confidently saying what they're going to do. And they're two huge stars. Ilya is this generation's Conor McGregor, and I think a face-off, a fight build-up, a possibility of a fight between Ilia Topuria versus Conor McGregor, either in Spain, in Ireland, wherever, is massive. Now, yes, I think Ilya would demolish Conor McGregor, but saying in a world where Conor McGregor goes out and beats Max Holloway in a round or two, most likely. That's the way that McGregor would probably have to do it, is by knockout in the first round or two. You as the UFC could argue that he beat Max quicker than Ilya did, and it wasn't a Max that was going down in weight. It was one that was coming up, so he was stronger. So you could say, Conor, maybe we'll move you down. We'll see if you can make the weight. We'll let you fight for the world championship against Ilya Taporia, or we'll let you welcome Ilya into the 170-pound division. And that's an absolutely massive fight. I mean, it is. There's no understating it. And Ilya Taporia is the headliner of the White House. Now, obviously, if Ilya loses to Justin Gaethje, this completely changes. There's a lot of differences that need to be made in some of this list. But I don't want to see the Justin Gaethje versus Conor fight. I would like to see Ilya because of these two going back and forth, the trash talk between them. We have the memes built in with Tapturo and slap his little head off, and you have the memes of them going against each other. The build up would just be insanity to have these two face off and fight each other at 170 for the 155 belt, whatever it would be. This would be a massive fight. Anything with Conor McGregor is one of the biggest fights you could possibly have. This one, though, I think could be. This one could rival just below Khabib McGregor. That is how big of a fight this could be because these two both such confidence, such good mic skills, such talent, such aura going into fights that McGregor off of a Max Holloway knockout win versus Ilya Taporia off of a White House knockout win over Justin Gaethje could be one of the most intense and fun build-ups to a fight we will ever see. And I think it could happen. I think there is a I think this one is much more likely to happen than an Islam one. Even if it's not for the belt, I could see Ilya being willing to take a first fight at 170 against a Conor McGregor. Simple as that. And yeah, that is my top five. Ilya Taporia, Charles Oliveira, Paddy Pimblett, Carlos Prates, Mauricio Rufy. Honorable mention to Islam Makhachev. I would love to see that, but I doubt it would ever happen. And yeah, that is what I think should happen if Conor McGregor was to beat Max Holloway at UFC 329. Now, obviously, that's a big if. That's a huge task for him to do is to beat Max Holloway, which I don't personally believe he will. But the sport could be in a very interesting place if McGregor does. The delusion that I will also fall into and hope that he could get back to the top of the mountain. If he knocks out Holloway, that is a huge win in this day and age. So, yeah, Conor McGregor, excited for this fight. There's no fights this weekend, so I wanted to make something, and I've been thinking about the McGregor possibilities since the fight got announced officially. It's going to be very interesting to see if he upsets and gets the win. We could be looking at a completely different environment in the 155 170 divisions. And yeah, because fighting a McGregor off of a win is a lot bigger than fighting him off of a 5-year layoff for a lot of people, because then they can also look at it as a step up into their rankings, a step up into their divisions. It's a massive moment in the UFC right now, and I cannot wait for this fight. I cannot wait to see the aftermath of it. Same with the White House with Ilya and the fight with Paddy on the undercard on the co-main event of this. Just yeah. So yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. Share this around, like, comment, subscribe. Check me out on TikTok, Devin MMA. And yeah, let me know if you like these types of videos or you want to see other ones. Let me know what other ideas and if I should do this with other fighters coming up in fights. And yeah, thank you. Have a good night and bye.